Jamie, you have a pretty big career in sprint cars, not only in Australia, also abroad. But how did you even get started in sprint cars?
With my family, my dad used to always take me and one of my best mates, Sean Middleton, to Rolly Park, and my dad was best mates with Bob Middleton. So we would go to Rolly Park every Friday night, watch Speedway, and just loved the whole Speedway thing as kids. And then one particular moment, I guess, in my dad's lifestyle, he was able to manoeuvre a few things around and buy himself a sprint car. And that was in 1980. So he bought an X when the Trossel team was out here racing. He bought one of those. There was a 3-car team. So he bought one of the Trossel cars and started racing. I think by the time, it was either 80-81 season, or it might have even been the 81-82 season that the car was ready, because they had to strip it all down, rebuild it, which Johnny Moyle did all that for Dad. And then Dad raced for a few years by himself, and I was racing motocross at the time. And then when around about 1983, 84, I was watching Dad race, and I would run down the pits. At that time you weren't allowed to go in the pits because you weren't old enough either. So I'd run down to the fence where Dad was pitted, and I'd say, Dad, you're racing the wrong line. You need to go in a little bit higher and follow the dirt and watch what these guys are doing in front of you, you need to be faster. And then in the end, after a few beers, at the end of the night back home, I'd rip into him about, because he used to do that to me with motocross. Tell you I was racing the wrong line, need to do this, do that. And so I would do the same watching him with race sprint cars, and he probably got a bit annoyed a couple of times, and then eventually he said, well, it's not that easy. He said, when you turn 16, you can have a go.
So how old are you at this point?
I would have been 15.
So at 15, you're already recognising racing lines and everything like that?
Yeah, it's, for anyone that's raced on dirt, it's pretty easy to pick that up, because if you've raced many years, like I raced mini bikes from 9 years old, and that's where I met Trevor Green, Jamie Moyle, lifelong friends, great mates today, and another great mate of mine, Sean Middleton, that was racing super sedans as well. When you grow up racing dirt, even if it's on a BMX and you're pedalling, you realise what happens with dirt, how it changes, and you get loose, you get wheel spin, and you find traction and things like that. So it was pretty easy to sort of figure out the racecraft. The hardest thing was getting used to, back in those days, 650 horsepower when you're a 16-year-old, never, hadn't even had a car licence. So you get my car licence, get my speedway licence same day, go out there during the week and have a drive, and straight away it was like, holy shit, I didn't realise there was that much power. Now it's 900 plus, but when you first kick off, it's pretty daunting. Yeah, so that's how it rolled. That's how I got started.
No car drive, nothing, no car before, not even a road car before.
No,
just straight into a sprint car. Yeah. And how'd the first session?
Well, when you're 16, you're thinking that you've got it covered. So I rolled out there on a Wednesday during the week and had a drive, and I felt like I was going pretty quick. And Dad said to me, he goes, you're going about the speed that we form up. And I'm going, no way, I'm going heaps faster than that. He goes, no, you're not, wait till you do a heat race on Friday night. So back in that day, they had a lot more sprint cars, so you had an A grade and a B grade.
Yeah.
So Dad would race the car in his A grade, pull up in the middle, and I'd be waiting there, and we'd just swap seats, and I'd jump back in, and then I'd go do the B grade race. So my first heat race started at the rear, and I remember coming around thinking, yeah, I'm going to pass you guys, you watch this, all cocky and stuff in 16 and all fired up, and green flag took off, and so did all the other cars. It was like, man, there was cars going everywhere. They were doing all this, mud's hitting me, and I'm trying to get a tear off, didn't know where I was going. And it was just an eye-opening thing to happen. And it was like, holy shit, man, I've got a bit to learn if I want to go fast. And you start respecting what guys go through when you're very new at it, especially when you've got a concrete wall one side, you've got, dudes next to you turning in at you and stuff like that. And as you start getting better and you start getting close to that, you've got to try and figure out how to not crash, how to be able to race without riding wheels and things like that. So it's pretty cool. It's a cool sport.
So how long did when did you really sort of start coming on?
It was probably about, probably towards the end of the season. In that year, and I ended up winning 3 main events, which was pretty cool. And once I started mixing it with them, it was probably about 4, maybe 5 races in. I started starting to sort of mix it a little bit and pass a few cars. And the speedway formats back then too they had handicap races.
Yeah.
So they'd put the slower guys and have a bit of a gap and spread out, a bit of a crowd entertainment thing. So there was all different types of laps that I was getting. A lot of probably times where I was out by myself in those handicap races, and then eventually Bill Barrows or Chaz Calandra or Bob Aylesbury, Zeke Agars, those guys would blow past you towards the end of that. But at least they were dealing with just one car by itself and they'd pass you. But once they passed you, because I was eager to learn and you had that racecraft from the mini bikes, you actually changed what you did, because you just didn't let them go. You actually, it's almost like my dad used to say, you change up a gear. It's like I found another gear, I went, oh, they're going in higher or wider than what I was, and they're not lifting. So then I started moving up and not lifting. And then it was like you gain a whole level of different trust with the race car. So you just start doing that, and then as each week went on, I was feeling myself getting faster and faster. And I think the first feature race I won, I started off on the outside front row, and I won that. From flag to flag. Second feature race I won because back then they seeded or handicapped the features as well, so the fast guys were towards the back. And then my second feature I started off second row outside, and probably took about, I think from memory, about half a dozen laps, nipped off the guys in front and won that one. And then the third feature I won, which was the next week, it was back to another row, so I was third row outside. And I remember the start of the main event, everyone sort of all bunched in on the bottom, and I just went straight to the top, didn't lift, blasted around the outside of top 6 cars and come out in front and went off and raced and won that one. So, but that one there, I've got a video of that one, and Chaz Calandra caught me, and he was nipping at my tail tank. In fact, he's probably faster than me, but I was just on the line that there wasn't enough room either side for him to go, and I wasn't making enough mistakes to muck up for him to get me. But he looked like he was a bit more than what I had. But win's a win, isn't it? Sometimes
doesn't matter how. Well, maybe it matters how, but it's still if you won it sort of thing. Doesn't matter by how much either. So you're late 16 by this stage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then where have you gone from there? Another.
Well, from there, I raced Dad's car, which I was putting all my money in. He wasn't funding any of that. So that was one of the deals that Dad said. He said, okay, I'll let you race the car. And it was probably later that year that Dad decided that I think we might have had a bit extra engine maintenance, which cost a little bit more because we're both driving the car. So he opted to step out and let me continue on by myself. So I had to generate my own sponsorship. So I found a few businesses and people came to me and got involved in the car, and that really helped out a lot. Gathered my own crew up and got a couple of mates, my best mate's Huda, Steve Samuels, he was working on my car, and his dad, Peter Samuels, just legendary blokes, best mates still today with those guys, and they worked real hard on my car, and we just did everything on a budget and got to a stage of, I think I was about at the end of the second season, just couldn't afford to race it anymore. So we sold everything up, and that year there, I need to think, that year there, I think I sat out for part of it, and then I had a phone call from Matthew Hoare, from Hoare Brothers, and he asked me was I interested in sharing a drive with the car with him, and he indicated pretty diligently that he probably wouldn't be driving too much, so it was mainly me, but he wanted to give it a go. So I started driving the Hoare Brothers car, and that's sort of how, I guess, there wasn't too many rides going on in Australia at that time, and John Sidney had Max driving a house car, and I really struggled to rack my brain of what car owners were out there that had people in their cars. There wasn't very many in that era.
It's like a different structure back then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It wasn't, yeah. It was guys who were scrapping together and they were racing their own gear. They're like, I'm not spending this money for someone else to go have the fun. It was totally different era compared to what it is today in that sort of sense, how that sort of stuff works out. So you're still 17 at this stage?
Yeah, I would have. Yep, I would have been. Actually, I was probably 18, and I'm just trying to think. I reckon in that era of, I might have been between 18 and 19 when I drove Horry's car, because I went to America first. That's when Jamie Miles said to me, he said, "Cheese man," he said, "if you want to go good in sprint cars," he said, "you've got to come to America with me. You got to come and learn. Got to learn from the best." And I was 18 at that time, and that I knew Mum and Dad wouldn't be very impressed or would let me go as an 18-year-old, even though Morley had been there the year before and even took Mouse with him, and Mouse at that time was probably 13. Those two hung out and raced, and I know Kath and Curve were like devastated that Mouse was leaving and his 13-year-old nicking off over to America, but he did really well and learnt so much, and was a trustworthy young kid and really passionate about the sport. So I remember at that time I went with Morley to get a ticket, and I came home and said to Mum, "I'm going to America." And she goes, "No, you're not." And I went, "Yeah, I am. I'm going there to learn. I'm going there with Morley." And she goes, "Yeah, righto." I said, "No, I've got a ticket." I pulled out a ticket. She goes, "No way." She goes, "How long are you going for?" "I don't know. I haven't got a return date on it." And she was freaking out. It was funny. So anyway, I went there with Morley, and we rolled up to Los Angeles and started working with a guy that Jamie knew, Wayne Bennett. He was building motors with Ron Shaver. And then from there, me and Mouse, Morley was heading off to Knoxville to go do some racing, and me and Mouse said we're going to, we call her Auntie Donna, but she's a very late, passed away a couple of years ago now. Such a legendary lady. She looked after so many Aussies going to California and racing. Her house was always open.
She was the billet.
to us all. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, she put up with a lot of crap from all of us Aussies, partying hard and running amok in her house, but she's a great lady. So yeah, me and Mouse went back there, and that's where I hooked up with Jason McMillan and started helping him on the cars and going to a few tracks, and then there was a guy by the name of Jim. I can't remember his last name, but he started Lightning Chassis for Jimmy Thorpe, I reckon. Lightning Chassis, and he was doing a road trip to take some chassis over to Kepler Motorsports, an outlaw show in Colorado. And at that time they had Doug Wolfgang driving for them. And he said, "Do you want to come for a ride? Have you ever seen an outlaw show?" And these guys were my heroes. So of course I've gone, "Yeah, I'm coming." He goes, "Kate, grab yourself an overnight bag, chuck some clothes in, and let's go." All right. So we drove off to Colorado, went and saw this outlaw show, delivered a chassis to Kepler Motorsports, and at that time one of the guys was actually on his way back to California. He'd had enough being out on the road and he wanted to come back to his family, and he was the wheel and tyre guy, and there was a spot open and they asked me did I want to stay on. So I just lucked into that role, and there I am. First team I'm working with, I'm learning off Doug Wolfgang, and Kelly Pryor was the crew chief, and Les Kepler was a car owner who's quite a famous car owner over there from Marks and Kepler. Had Doty driving their car with the Coors Light team years before that, and it was just such a great team, and they took me in like family, and we've become great friends even today. Jamie Kepler, still friends with her, not as much as I would like, but certainly we keep in touch via Facebook, and great girl, and good memories over there with that team. And that year there Wolfgang ended up moving on, and what happened there, we had Heidenshield drive the car, and then Richard Brown and Gary Stanton had a vacancy in their team, and we had a lot of guys on our team, and Gary Stanton asked could he steal me for a night to give him a bit of a hand with Brad Doty driving the car. So Kepler's allowed me to go, and then Richard Brown, he was very good friends with Kepler's and Kelly Pryor, and it was a mutual agreement, loved the team, but I just wanted some more experience. So I switched teams and started working with Gary Stanton and Richard Brown on the 49 car. And very scary moment when Brad had his crash, but it scared me about sprint car racing there for a little while, seeing the crash happen, and Gary and I being down there on the racetrack and having to cut some of the chassis away to get Brad out of the car, and Brad was not obviously in a good way, and it was very, 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 very scary moment for me to be part of that, as well as see and know Brad's family that were going through some heartache at the time as well with Brad's injuries. So that was a very daunting moment for me in sprint car racing back in 1988. And that year there, I came back home and then raced the Hall Brothers car. And then in 1989, I went back to America, and joined back up with Kelly Pryor, who was crew chief and for Jeff Swindell, and that's how I got to know Jeff Swindell through that deal, and crewed for him through the whole World of Outlaw tour in 1989, learning so much from those guys between Wolfgang, Golden Shield and Swindell. Just I guess a money can't buy experience.
Yeah, you'd probably have to pay someone like that now to go on a tour like that. That's So you're 19 at this stage?
Yep.
Yeah. And you're doing a full World of Outlaw tour as like Thai guy. Yeah. So you're saying all of America, like.
Yeah, we went to whatever states they travelled to. There's probably not too many states I hadn't been to.
How many shows were they doing back then?
Back then it was like 110 or something like that, over 100.
Yeah, right. So that's getting towards like nearly a full year, or are they just cramming them all into their summer?
It's about a 10 month exercise. So I was overstaying my visa.
Yeah.
You know, when you went through the customs at the time, they stamped you for 6 months, but if you left and you were 3 months later, they didn't care as long as you were leaving.
Yeah.
And then next time when you came in, they would say to you at the gate, "Oh, you overstayed your visa last time." Why is that? I said, "Oh yeah, just got caught up having a lot of fun, having a nice holiday." "Oh, okay. So you plan on still leaving this time?" Yeah. Which I did. You know, I never had intention to stay there.
Yeah. It's pretty. Was that? I'm assuming it was still just as grueling as it is today, being on the road back then.
Yeah, I don't imagine it being much different to what we experienced. You know, we all had to work hard. We all had to, you know, you're always changing tyres and you're always building race cars and you're always travelling. You know, there was sometimes we were actually riding in the trailer doing work on the race car while we were travelling, which probably not the right thing to do, but that's what we had to do to, you know, if we wanted to change something or fix something in a hurry, that's what we did.
Yeah, because the shows are back to back, or
you
haven't got, literally don't have the time, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe some of that stuff still goes on there these days. Definitely doesn't happen in Australia, but yeah. So you've done the full World of Outlaw tour as a crew member, and then come back home again.
Yep. Okay, so that was 89. So 1990, I came back here and had I can't remember how it happened, but somehow Harry Delamont was asking Gary Brazier to drive his car. And Gary wanted to drive his own car, so Gary suggested he look at me. And I'd been friends with the Braziers for a little while, and it was that year that I then moved to Sydney and lived with the Braziers, and Harry brought all his stuff up to the Brazier house in the garage, and Steve wouldn't let me race it unless we stripped it back to the basic bare frame and restart it all again. And another eye-opening experience, you know, that Steve Brazier is one of my legendary heroes, and to be working on race cars till 5 o'clock in the morning, all night, we'd pull all-nighters working on these race cars. I just learnt so much, even little things that I didn't probably even pick up with the Outlaw guys, just fussy things that I guess every little bit makes a difference if you want to go fast. And he, just to give me that time and I guess the coaching that he gave me was just, again, another money can't buy experience. So I was working for the Braziers during the day, working the drum factory, rolling drums around and lifting drums and picking them up and dropping them off, and we go home and go work on race cars all night, have a sleep in till about 10 or 11 o'clock, get back up, get working away and work all day again till about 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night, come home and work on race cars till 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning again. And then that year I raced Harry's car up in Parramatta. Never won anything up there, but had a couple of good races there with Brooke Tatnall, where I ran second. Damn it, beat me a few times. But it was really good experience. And then that year there, I knew after 2 years of working in the Outlaws, I knew it was time to try and get a ride in America. So I went back to America in 1990 and took Gary Brazier with me to give him some coaching and give him some experience over in America. So he came with me and we stayed at Donna's, based ourselves in Sacramento, and then I had to start looking for a ride. So I started going to the racetracks and helmet bag, race suit, going to the track, wandering through the pits and just asking questions as to, you know, who's the car owner of this car, who's that car, who's got drivers in, who doesn't. Because I didn't want to go rock up and talk to some dude's dad who had his kid driving the car and trying to get him kicked out. But you had to be very honest with your own ability. Well, I was anyway. I would earmark a couple of cars that I knew had car owners that had been going through a few different drivers, and I'd watch them for the night. And there was a few there that I just knew. I knew what my own ability was. I knew I could be better than that guy.
Yeah.
So I would go and talk to the car owner after the races, introduce myself, and be honest and upfront with him. And I'd say, I'm here from Australia, I'm looking for a ride. I'd love to drive your car. I can guarantee you I'll be better than the guy you just had in it. And
how'd that all go?
And I think they thought we're pretty cocky, us Aussies, you know, speaking like that. But I guess I was cocky, but I really felt that I could back it up.
Yeah.
You know, I just knew, you know, you just know what your own level was like. So first time out in this guy's car, I didn't make the show, but it wasn't my fault. Something happened mechanically, so we didn't make any transfers, so we didn't make the show. But he saw that we had good speed. Next night out, we ran fifth or sixth in a NARC main event, and that was Northern Auto Racing Club. And then we started consistently running sort of 5th to 10th in that window with those guys, with Brent Kadings and Tim Greens and Steve Kents and Ronnie Days, you know, the good Jason McMillans, just really good guys in California, Rick Hurst. Those guys were all front running guys and tough guys to learn to race with. They really helped me, I guess, get better and better again. And then the car that I drove, dear friend of mine today, there's one thing I can say, every car owner that I've driven for, I'm still friends with today.
Yeah, right.
We've all ended on great terms, and whether I got fired or whether I left or whatever the story was, we're all still good friends, and we, you know, have a lot of respect for each other. So in the year that was 1990, and I think it was 91 was when I got a phone call from Dave Farrell from here in Adelaide, asked me was I interested in driving his car when I came back. So I did, and that was our start of that relationship, where I came back and started racing for Dave Farrell in the Road and Track Services, Jarvis Ford race car, and had some great times there. And while I was over here racing, the race car that I drove in America, because I helped it get on the map with it probably going faster than what it looked like it had ever gone before. There was someone undercut me and did a slide job on me and took my ride. Someone with a better name than me. I won't say his name. He's one of my friends today, but American dude. So he was a better driver than me, granted. So anyway, he slid on in. He got the ride. So I went back there again and had no ride. So I just had to do the same thing. So I started kicking rocks around the pits and going talking to people, and that's where I come across Ted Finkenbinder in the 3F sprint car, and it became a marriage almost. Like we just clicked, and the first year I drove his car, I won 3 main events. Second year, so 92, I won like 25 main events. 93, we won, I think it was something like 20 something, 22, 23 main events.
Yeah. How many shows is NARC running?
We were doing, NARC, I can't recall how many NARC would actually do. But I was doing between 50 and 60 races a season in California.
Yeah, right. Just anything that was going, you were there.
Yeah,
sort of
so
yeah.
We, for instance, with Ted's car, just so I could get the laps, and he was happy for me to get laps and help me become a better race car driver, we would take a 360 cubic inch sprint car, because he didn't have a 410 at that stage. We would take the 360 to the local 410 show every Friday night at Chico, and we would race against the 410s with 360. And quite often I was running top fives. I was running 5th, 6th, sometimes 10th maybe. But this one particular night, track was rough, hooked up, and I was running second, and I had a really good line going, missing a few ruts, and the guy in front, Shane Scott, he bounced, got out the road, boom, I've gone through into the lead. I'm leading this 410 feature with my 360, and I'm seeing these 410s because I'm watching the video, and I've still got the video today, or now we've transferred it to DVD. So when you watch the video, you can see Shane Scott, just when he needs to, he just catches me. But then he hits a hole, bounces out, and he ends up bouncing off the track. Sends a restart, he's gone the back, caused the yellow. Randy Tyner, he was a heavy metal, foot down gasser dude, right? Randy Tyner, he's driving that Tognoddy house car for Dwayne Starr, which I ended up having to drive in later on in 93. I drove that car, but I'll get to that in a minute. So Randy's all over me, bounces off the track. So then all of a sudden the dudes who are faster than me bounced off the track, and I just kept on staying where I was and going around the ruts, just making it smooth line, and end up winning the feature. And people coming up and saying, so when did you get your 410? I said, there's no 410s, 360. They're going, no way, you've just painted the alloy block, you've just painted it. And we didn't, so it was a genuine 410 show that we won with the 360 motor.
Man, I can't think of the last time that would have happened. Those days are well and truly gone now.
Well, I ran a local show at Adelaide, driving Ray Bartlett's car. I ran third in a feature race against 410s.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I can't imagine, I can't see anything like that happening now though. Like, everyone's sort of starting to talk that they're getting well over 900 horsepower now. So, yeah. What was the horsepower disparity back then?
Probably a fair bit, I would say.
Were the 410s doing 900 horsepower back then though?
No, we were more around 800.
Yeah.
Yeah, around the cracking low eights.
Yeah.
360s were probably 100 off.
Yeah.
I'd say.
It's still a massive amount.
You can feel 100 off. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. So
where'd you end up from that point?
So that was so we're at 92. 92 came back, drove Dave's car. So we were winning. I think we won a few local features with Dave's car, and we won the Coca-Cola Nationals at Avalon in Dave's car. And that was I had to pass Max Dumsey to win that one. So anytime you're passing Max to win a feature back then,
you'll take it.
Doing something right. So we did that, and then I went back, raced Ted's car 93, and came back, and then I just kind of felt like I was travelling a lot, and I felt like I was spinning my wheels in life. Like I felt like I really wasn't gonna end up with anything. You know, like I seen a few older dudes in America at the time and didn't really have. When I say have much, you know, they weren't living well. They're living week to week sort of thing, and I thought I don't want to be one of those guys that lives week to week. And I was kind of doing that over in America, living off your prize money. And so I decided to quit. I just pulled the pin. I pulled the pin with Dave Farrell back here and pulled the pin in America, and I just stopped racing. That was sort of at the end of 93. And then, so I went for a couple of years, and then in 96 I got a phone call from Ted Finkenbinder again, and he said to me, he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Not much." And he said, "Do you want to come back and drive my race car?" And I'd been thinking about it, and I went, "Yeah, why not? Let's go." I said, "You send me a ticket and I'll come over." So he did. So we rolled up, and we just started winning races. And 96 was a very successful year for the 3F team, and I think we won like 28 main events that year, and that included winning, was that 410? No, my first 410 feature with NARC was in 92. So we raced a mixture of 410 and 360 stuff. Raced some outlaw shows that came through to California as well. There was a time in 93, I'm going to backtrack here, in 93 I drove the Tognoddy house car for Dwayne Starr at a couple of outlaw shows because we didn't have 410 at that time, and I drove for Kelly Kane, Casey Kane's dad. Yep. That's how I met the Kane family earlier that year in 93 when Kelly asked me to drive his car in the Skagit Dirt Cup. In 92 I won the 360, they called it the 360 special, but it was basically the 360 Skagit Dirt Cup for 360s. So I won that in 92, which was probably my biggest race to win because there was over 100 cars that entered this race, cars from Canada and around, you know, different states that went there to race. And the guy that had won the 410 Skagit Dirt Cup only a few weeks earlier, Bobby Burrow, he was racing a 360 in our show as well, and he'd set fast time. You know, he was setting a benchmark that he was the guy to beat, and him and I traded spots a couple of times and through the feature race, and I ended up winning it. So it was a really cool race. Run up against the fence, banging the guardrail. Pretty much that's how close we were. And pulling a couple of slide jobs on each other and getting close, but it was a really, really good race to win, that one.
Officially retired, or you just
Yeah.
you officially
Yeah, I'm retired.
And are you happy at that point?
Totally.
A lot of drivers don't officially retire per se. They just don't have drives or something like that. But
Yeah, no, look, I haven't looked for anything, haven't tried for anything. I don't desire it. I'm busy enough I'm enjoying my weekends. You know, I'm building a business. I've got Oneida. I use it for a plug. I've got oneida.com.au, and it's spelled INEADA, not double E, so eada.com.au. It's a nice little platform that's growing really well. Got lots of deals on there and vehicles for sale. So I'm building businesses. That's keeping me really busy on weekends, and having the Swindell Bleeders Australian dealership. It keeps me flat out supplying all the races from midgets to Formula 500s and sprint cars.
Still
with
keeps
all their
you connected
bleeders.
to everything.
Yeah. So I'm connected with
still,
everyone.
Still in the loop of everything that's going on.
Yeah.
So the Bleeder's probably one of the biggest technological advances in sprint cars since when, forever, really, isn't it? There's nothing.
It's massive change.
There's nothing like. I know that the cars and the bodies and that sort of stuff's changed over the last sort of decade, but nothing's come to the scene that advanced in forever. It's kind of crazy that we're still to our roots as a sport. Even when you see cars from the 70s that had the massive wings and stuff like that, they're still a modern day sprint car, still recognisable to what that is. We haven't strayed too far from the path in that sense.
No, as far as they've advanced with horsepower, they've advanced with shocks, they've advanced with probably even torsion bars probably work differently. A couple of different positions of torsion bar tubes and chassis bar heights and engine motor plate angles and measurements. They're probably a few things. I think we've tried to implement safety things with the right motives at heart, but I don't think it's worked. I've seen more injuries in sprint cars since they've gone to the containment seats. So personally, I don't like getting in and out of a containment seat after feeling the normal high back. I mean, I started racing sprint cars with a low back seat, just like these. So I've had some big dumps with both seats.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if it's the right way. I think there's probably some more expert people that could be involved before those decisions are made.
I've seen a few things that until we change the seating position, the safety's never going to be able to evolve into where it sort of probably should be, kind of thing. And it's you can't move the seating position without the cars changing the look of them completely. So it's we're sort of stuck in our ways with that. That's just the way it is.
And I think probably to keep people... Look, I think there needs to be... there's scientists that do tests of how the spine sits and things like that when you move around, and when you're so locked in and your body can't move, the only thing that can give is vertebrae and they compact. So I just don't think it's the right, but who am I to talk? I don't have a degree in that, but my opinion is the facts are there's been more back injuries since they've gone to containment seats than just the regular high back seats. I think the sprint car chassis, I know they added the outlaw bar, which comes up to the side of the roll cage now, which is a good thing. But there's still things at the back of the cage that keeps the driver exposed. Maybe there needs to be just a few more bars around for a bit more safety. Otherwise, the last thing we want to do is lose drivers from accidents. So I think it's very, very important that whether it's controlling bodies get involved or seek the professional advice from people that have got experience in body positioning and placements and engineering advice on, like the guy that come up with the Outlaw bar, he's just a regular sprint car owner.
Yeah.
He suggested it, and everyone said, yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And everyone's got it.
Yeah.
It's not law here, but it should be.
I think it's mandated as of
Right.
next season. Yeah, you'll have to have it. I think for wingless as well. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that, but yeah.
But once a wing's gone, or even the wingless, there's so much still exposed at the top of the chassis.
Yeah.
If you just crash and you're facing the wrong way, and someone comes at you with the nose of a race car, there's not much really protecting you. So I think they need to look at a little bit more protection.
Yeah, before we start looking at seat changes and.
Yeah, I think it's a shame that we usually wait till there's a fatality before we make a change. Well, it should be looking at the logistics of it before there's a fatality for it, because it's not fair to the families that lose a loved one. That I know it's all risk and we all understand the risk, but it's still not fair that if a change is made after the fact.
Yeah.
We don't need someone to pass away from it to be that nudge to make the change. We should be looking at every possibilities now and discussing them to figure that out. Well, what could save a life here? Is it possible this can happen? Or if it's yes, okay, what can we do to mitigate that?
Yeah.
And that's how it should be looked at.
Yeah. I just can't ever see the sport doing anything as drastic as changing the seating position or anything like that. Like it just, maybe in time, but definitely not in any point, sort of in the near future. Are you going to see some sort of totally different sprint car with the seating, where they're sitting like more Formula 1 style or anything like that? You just, I don't know. Personally, I just can't see anything like that happening.
No, that's right. But I think sprint cars are, they're set up the way they are, and that's the design of a sprint car. But the seats have changed. And, apart from Brad Doty's accident with the low back seat, but the low back seat wasn't what broke his back. It was the rest of the things that caved around the seat and the rear end, slapping the back of his spine in that type of crash. But apart from that, you'd be really struggling to think of anyone that's been hurt with the regular Butler-built high back seat. Forget the containment side, but the older school guys that have been through the periods of all the different seats and the different laws, like I felt so much safer in a high back seat without a harness device, with a Simpson Halo horse collar neck collar, with the helmet strap, and the window net. My head couldn't go that way because the helmet strap was pulled down tight. And as far as going forward, you had your helmet and your horse collar that came down and compacted on the foam, which, I've got photos that Phil Jordanson took of me going nose on into Warrnambool's wall in turn 1 when the steering box failed, and my head's just about hitting the dash. When I came back into sprint car racing in 2005 and had to wear the harness device, I felt unsafe. And you shouldn't feel that way. A driver shouldn't be strapping into a race car and feeling unsafe. The way those, in a Formula 1 where you're laid back and they come over, it's a whole different body shape.
Yeah.
Like what you said, sprint cars where you're sitting upright and you've got a harness device and you've got a belt coming over, it's too easy for that belt to get pressured or fall off the shoulder and someone moves around.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's been enough investigative things or looking into that sort of stuff enough to protect the drivers.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing. Someone's got to spend the money to start with. That's what it really comes down to. Someone's got to see being honest, they probably got to see a space in the market for some sort of new device or something like that to spend the money to sort of work all this stuff out. But until then, we'll just probably keep going the way we are. So
But you know, like Jeff Swindell, he's I've seen some chassis designs that he's come up with. Actually, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. But he's been working with a specific chassis builder with some safety options, and you know he's all for safety. He was one of the first guys that had the shoulder side bits in his seat. You know, he had a regular high back seat for Butler built, and he designed the shoulder thing, so that gave him a bit more. That was in 1989 that he had that, and you know he's always thinking of how to better something in sprint cars. You know, like what he did with the bleeders. You know, that's just an amazing thing. You know, most people have got his bleeders. If they don't, then they soon will have, because the other ones don't last as good. So,
do you see any other like major advances coming in sprint cars in the near future?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I've had that Jeff's had the conversation with me on. So Jeff's always got stuff in the pipeline. So we'll have to wait and see.
No.
Yeah.
Do you see any big like body changes or anything like that sort of coming, or?
I haven't, no. Doesn't mean that it's not in progress. I mean, people are starting to change the shapes of the body panels now, and I you know, even with the left arm side guards. But yeah, I mean, it's okay to have these things, but you got to think about if you need to get out in a hurry.
Yeah.
How quick can you get out?
Yeah.
And that's what I didn't like about the full containment seat, was that big thing on this side is just enough to stop you from getting out nice and easy.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I've always thought about too, like some way of the seat being able to be unbolted quickly so you can pull the driver out in their seat, but there's just no way of doing it. They just start cutting bars out and everything like that. Like it's just, yeah. The only other thing I have seen a lot of lately too is drivers are starting to get moulded to their seat. They're going to the like resin injection, like they're sitting in the seat and getting like the resin injection done in the bag and all that sort of stuff. So that's, you know, at least they're starting to sort of do that, and they're not just taking the padding that comes with the seat. That's, you know, they're actually getting a bit more, you know, we're sort of advancing on that front. But yeah. No, it's an interesting thing that sprint cars still like, you know, been around a long time, but like you look at other like you look at IndyCar from where it started to they are now, and there's not really much comparison. Like, but you know,
it's just fine tuning the parts, isn't it?
Yeah, but like sprint cars still big wing, big right rear, like they're still you know, loud and angry, and you know, to me it's the greatest form of motorsport. Like I cannot understand how people go and watch circuit racing. It just I don't get it. I don't know why, but you know, like, and then like I'll watch pavement sprint cars, but I won't watch anything on a pavement circuit. Like it just doesn't, you know. And then trying to get people interested in it is so hard. They find it bizarre that you'll go and watch something that's dusty and dirty and mud's flinging around. But I don't know. Maybe we're a special breed of people. I don't know.
Well, I think I mean, America's starting to do it probably a lot better than what we are. I think that for Speedway and sprint cars to get a lot more popular. I mean, you look at the 7+ coverage of the Australian title.
Yeah.
They had record viewings.
Yeah.
You know, over and above. I think it was second to the Super Bowl in America. Numbers of viewings, because there was worldwide people tuning into that to watch that event, and I suppose with the streaming now, it does keep some people away, but promoters need to be aware that it's an entertainment spectacle. Yeah. And if you've got nothing going on and it's quiet, like the stories I heard from Warrnambool, the racing was great when it was racing, but there was a lot of boring stuff in between. Yeah. And you know, I've heard lots of stories of people not wanting to go back because of that, and you can't do that to people. You've got to be a promoter that. Look at Peter Murphy, what he does. Yeah. Peter Murphy does a fantastic job promoting whatever speedway he's involved with, and he's learnt so much from Brian Healy and just being involved in the sport as long as he has. He knows what the crowd likes, and now that he's he's a spectator now to some degree, but you've got to bring entertainment to the crowd.
Yeah.
And the crowd will keep coming back.
So I was watching the Peter Murphy Classic the other week, and for some reason they were grading the track, and he was on the roof throwing out T-shirts. And the crowd's going absolutely nuts. He's throwing out T-shirts, and then the next minute he's down the front and he's got lolly bags for all the kids and stuff. Like, there was not a minute that something wasn't going on. There's always something happening, and maybe a bit of distraction going on that you're not sort of looking at the grader.
Yeah.
But yeah, we seem to sort of be here like, not the graders out there, like we've parked up for an hour or maybe more, but they seem to keep everything sort of rolling over there. And yeah, the guy wins the dash, comes to the crowd, like comes to that like pre-fence, like he's right there with the kids, like the kids can see him. Like, for us, like, how many kids even know what the drivers look like? Thanks very much, Jamie. It's been a pleasure.
Done.
Hope we'll definitely do some more. There's definitely a few more topics we can cover, and probably unintentionally ruffle a few feathers as well. But yeah, thanks very much.
No worries, it's been good.
Thank you.